Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Robin and this is Savor at Home number 90. Now 90 feels like kind of a big deal, so I thought we'd do something cool for the 90th Savor at Home tasting. And what I'm gonna be doing is a blind tasting of 3 different Buffalo Trace whiskeys. I'm going to be blind tasting Buffalo Trace Kosher, the wheated recipe, and Weller Antique 107. I'm gonna see which of the 3 of these I think taste best, and I'm also gonna see if I can actually figure out which one's which. I have not tasted any of these in a very long time, so we'll see how that goes. In order to taste these blind, I'm going to need an assistant. Here you go.
Okay, I'll see you in a bit.
Thanks.
All right, guys. I'm gonna try to confuse Robin on this one. We've got 3 different kinds of Glencairns. We've got a plain one. We've got one that says Bardstown Bourbon Company on it. And we've got one that says Peatin Meatin Scotch Club. And then we've got our 3 whiskeys. And Robin can't see this, but just to be safe, I'm not going to announce which ones I'm pouring into which glass in case she can hear us. So I'm going to put this one in the plain glass. And I'm gonna put this one in the Peatin Meatin glass. And finally, this one in the Bardstown glass.
Okay.
Here you go, I'm done.
Thanks. All right, so as you saw, Jerry has poured the 3 bourbons, the 3 Buffalo Trace bourbons, into 3 different Glencairns for me, and I have no idea which one's in which glass. Now, with blind tastings, I really try not to do the deliberation right up front. I try to just taste them blind, right? I try to pick up any aromas and flavors that I'm getting and write those down. And then after I've tasted all 3 of them, I'll go back and try to figure out which is which. But first, I just want to taste them blind without trying to figure out which one's which, if that makes sense. And I'll do my best. Okay, so we'll start with the plain Glencairn. So yeah, nice, beautiful, rich caramel color. The first thing I get is orange. There's a little bit of nuttiness, somewhere between like almonds and hazelnuts. There's some caramel, and there's a little bit of dustiness, but it's also got some sweetness, so almost like dusty old candies. A little waxiness, maybe that's more like silly putty. So there's a little bit of heat right off the bat, but there's lots of sweet, fruity flavors. I'm getting lots of figs and cranberries, but almost like sweet cranberries rather than tart cranberries. And there's a lot of spice that I'm picking up. It's nutmeg, cinnamon, clove with just like a hint of star anise. And then the finish is some nice bitter chocolate. There might be a little dried herbal thing in there as well. It's nice. Let's move on to the Bardstown Bourbon glass. Now, again, this has a nice, beautiful caramel color, and yeah, it looks to be the same color, maybe slightly lighter, but again, I don't think Jerry filled this one as high as the other 2. This one to me has a little bit more like a bright fruit thing. It's definitely floral. There's almost like sweet flower notes, maybe a little dried cherry, There's definitely some caramel notes, but almost like if you were to make a simple syrup and use caramel instead of sugar. And there's a little musty, fruity thing. This one has some heat as well, but this kind of presents itself as prickliness. There's definitely like a lot of apple notes. There's some sweet apples, there's some apple juice, and there's like apple pie filling. There's more of a floral thing. Yeah, that floral thing comes forward on the palate as well. And there's definitely a cinnamon bark finish with maybe a touch of fruits in the background. Last one is Peatin Meatin. It definitely looks darker than the Bardstown, and yeah, maybe a little darker than the plain glass. Right off the bat, this one's giving me a little bit more dark dried fruits like prunes. It also has some sweet orange as well as like the orange oils. There's like a funky, musty, fruity thing, and vanilla, like a lot of vanilla. I'm also getting a little bit of that waxiness and like dusty poopery. So this one definitely has a lot more heat, and that heat just kind of lingers longer than the other two. And it's got a really, really, really silky mouthfeel though, once that heat starts to come down. And I get a lot of those dark dried fruits. So I'm getting those prunes. I'm getting a little bit of like, maybe dried cranberry, could also be more like a dried cherry. And there's a lot of chocolate. It's like chocolate covered dried fruits. So again, chocolate covered prunes, maybe chocolate covered figs. And there's like a candied orange thing as well. There's also some spice, but this is more like cloves and allspice. So I've tasted all three of them. And before I deliberate and figure out which was which and tell you which one I preferred of the three, I want to give a huge shout out to the Patreons. Thank you guys so much for helping to support the channel. And if you, the viewer, would also like to join us over on Patreon, I've got a link in the description below. This helps, yeah, support the channel beyond just likes and subscriptions and sharing my videos. Okay, so these are all very similar. Again, all three of them are Buffalo Trace products. All three of them are Kentucky straight bourbons. The biggest differences between them are going to be the mash bill as well as the proof. Weller 107 is sitting at 107 proof, which is 53.5% ABV. And so it's at a much higher ABV than the other two. Buffalo Trace Kosher is sitting at 47%, and then Buffalo Trace regular bourbon is sitting at 45% ABV. Now, Buffalo Trace Bourbon is the mash bill #1, which is a kind of traditional rye bourbon mash bill. So there's going to be at least 51% corn in the mash, rye and malted barley as the other two ingredients. And it's said to have a low rye mash bill, which I think is sitting at 10, maybe a little under 10% rye. Weller 107 and the Buffalo Trace Kosher recipe are the same mash bill. So these are the wheated recipe mash bill, which is using wheat in place of the rye. And usually there's a little bit more wheat that's used, usually somewhere around 20% wheat in the mash, but Buffalo Trace does not disclose their mash bills. Anyways, they're both bourbons, so they have to have at least 51% corn in the mash. But yeah, now keep in mind the Kosher is not always the wheated recipe. They also have their rye bourbon and they have a rye. That's kind of my thought process there, as I'm looking for a higher heat profile, you know, how hot it is, coming from the Weller 107. And then I'm looking for similar flavor profiles once I figured out which one's the Weller 107 to figure out which one's the Buffalo Trace Kosher wheat recipe. So yeah, that's how my deliberation's going. That's my logic behind deciding which one's which. Anyways, this is really hard. I think I should go based off of my tasting notes. I'm gonna give my results based on my tasting notes. And I don't think I'm gonna change my answers.
Okay.
I could sit here for a lot longer and nose and taste them side by side. But I believe that plain Glencairn, we'll go in this order. The first one I tasted, I believe, is the Buffalo Trace Kosher wheat recipe. Oh no, your face. I believe Bardstown, the second one I tasted, was regular Buffalo Trace. Oh no. So I believe that Peatin Meatin was Weller 107. Did I get them all incorrect? Just say it.
You are
incorrect. I am correct.
correct. That's really impressive.
Thanks. Oh my gosh. That was really challenging.
I'm very surprised.
You're surprised?
Well, yeah, it's hard.
I used logic.
Good job. Okay, goodbye.
Honestly, all three of these are really, really delicious. And if I had to choose one, I think out of the three of these, I honestly prefer the Buffalo Trace Kosher wheated recipe. I really liked the fruity notes. It had a little bit of heat, but that brought more of a creamy mouthfeel rather than actually like bringing forward a lot of heat. And it had a lot of nice chocolate notes too. It's really nice and delicious. And Buffalo Trace is known for having these delicious and sweet bourbons. And so oftentimes Buffalo Trace products get marked up a lot. Weller right now is marked up way higher than it should be. Weller should be like $35. But it's marked up a lot higher than that. And for $35, it's delicious. I'd say even for like $50, this is a great buy. But if you're having to hunt it down, definitely not worth it. I have an easy time finding Buffalo Trace, their regular standard bourbon, but in a lot of states, it's hard to find. And often it's limited to like one per customer if you can find it. Buffalo Trace is a great option. This should be like $25. So if you're in a liquor store that is marking it up to 60, 70, just try something else. Like, yeah, try something else. It's a great bourbon, but not for that price. And the Buffalo Trace Kosher wheated recipe I got for $35. That's what it should cost. For $35, definitely worth the price, but I've seen it marked up for $299. Definitely not worth that price, but it is really delicious. And this was released in 2020 for the first time. So there was a lot of hype around that release. And so a lot of the bottles were bought up very, very quickly, hence the markup. But yeah, I think out of the three of these, I would say that this one was my favorite for today. I think on a normal day, it would probably be the Weller 107 when my palate's not feeling so fresh, I guess, and so sensitive, just because of the proof. All right, guys, that was really fun and really challenging, and I love blind tastings. They're super, super hard and super humbling, and I need to do them more often because I preach about how great they are. But I do recommend doing blind tastings, definitely. If you enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments. Let me know if you want me to do more tastings like this. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe and share it with friends and hit the notification bell because I do Savor at Home tastings every week. Let's see if I can hold these. Okay. I'm not sure my hand's big enough. Okay, all right, all right. I'm drunk already. Fruit. I mean, I would have, yeah, I would have been embarrassed if I guessed them incorrectly.
I mean, that's impressive.
It's official. I've got a good palate. I guess I could go on a full rant about Buffalo Trace being marked up.